a lot of our relationships, regardless of our strengths and our weaknesses, they combine together to make the relationship what it is. And what we do at times, we look at these things and we embrace what we think is missing out of our relationship. We have to come to the point to where we become very comfortable in what we have, but we find means to bring out the best of what we have, or what God has given us to share. Because we have to really look at it from this perspective that our marriages are truly a special testimony, not just to God, but those who see us. Regardless of what's being poured into us, our relationships are testimonies that those that know us see the productivity and the fruit that God has given us, that now enables other relationships, other partners to understand what it truly means to endure and to grow and to lean on each other. And that's something you can't get from looking at someone else's relationship. No one knows our story like we do. No one knows someone else's story but them. But it's the contents and the foundation of the relationship that makes it stand on its own.
You know what, Mr. P? I think the word today is definitely going to be a bouncing back and forth, because as much as I wanted to lead today, it's just been a back and forth. Are you going to do it? Am I going to do it? And I think that today is really going to be a real talk type of podcast today. And that's why it's called Life with the Polites, because as we go through things in our lives, like you said, we want to be able to bring our experiences
Absolutely.
to the people, because sometimes some of the things that we are going through would be of a help to those who may be also going through, a situation as well. And you said something, and this is the most I have said for those who have been watching for a whole entire year. And there's been a reason why I've been quiet for a whole entire year. And I know it's all going to come out today as well. And you started out by saying, in relationship, people become comfortable, and that's fine. There's a season for that. But what happens when the uncomfortability sets in, because there is, I think we're going to just have real talk, and I'm going to let you flow, and then I'm going to come in with the real talk, okay? So you can flow the way you're going to flow, and as you're doing what you're doing, I know that I'm going to probably be picking some nuggets out so that we can really have some real talk here, so that I can talk and begin to open my mouth, because I've been closed for an entire year. But yes, as I was saying, uncomfortability sets in relationships, because at times in seasons of relationships, people are changing. And whenever people are changing, meaning the two adults, okay, that's when the uncomfortability is going to set in, and so we need to be aware of when you can be comfortable in a relationship and when you have to start looking at things from a different perspective, because there's some uncomfortability, because people are changing. And then that's when you have to respect that other person's space, that other person's relationship with God. Because right now, another word that I can use that brings uncomfortability is reflection. And that's the season that I've been in for the past year, is reflection, because of all of what of what I have done in relationships, whether it's me, you and I relationship, me and my children's relationship, me and family relationship, me and job relationship. It comes a time when people start taking a reflection. And so that can bring some uncomfortability, because see, when people are starting to do a reflection, you're starting to make decisions for you.
True.
You follow what I'm saying?
True.
There's time in the relations where you're making decisions to help everybody, and then there's time in the relationship where you start taking a reflection of yourself, and so uncomfortability start taking place. However, if the two parties or whoever's involved, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whatever it may be, when that uncomfortability sets in, that's when two key things come into respect, and you'll find out whether people respect you and whether people love you. Because if they really love you and respect you, then they will allow you or that individual to finally be able to be the person that they want to be, instead of being the person that everybody else wants them to be, or the person that they aided everybody else in all these different types of relationships. So for all my listeners, that's kind of the season that I've been in. And I'm coming out. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so I'm gonna let you flow.
Amen. One of the things that what you just said, and just to continue on that flow, what came to me as you were speaking was the word impact. So as one changes, as we change, there's an impact, and that impact can be to where it provides an in-depth look at how each other is improving in the relationship, and the impact can also be the need that's lessening that relationship. There's always some type of impact, or I normally say, or I feel in a lot of disregards, when we make a decision, we have to understand the aftermath of our decision making. Whether or not it's good or bad, there's always the aftermath of that decision. And how we move forward is, how does that impact improve our relationship? Because again, like I said earlier, I truly believe that our relationships are a testimony not just to ourselves, but a testimony for those who are really trying to improve their relationships and become healthy in their relationships and build a strong marriage. But as you were speaking, I got the impact came to me, because it affects inner and outer. What do I mean by that? At home and abroad. Because when it affects abroad, then it can affect in-house. Not on a personal level, but your mind is being torn in places to where you're struggling against the non-respect, the non-commitment, the unselfishness, those that feel that they're pressing their will. There is an enormous amount of impact when we come to the point and we stand for the things in which we truly believe in, or those things that affect us just personally. Because if it affects you personally, then it could affect you relationship-wise, because guess what? That cross that you're bearing now becomes from the outside to the inside. So there's a domino effect here. But then that's when we have, the leaning on each other in the relationship, having that we attitude to really come to the point to where we have to communicate in a way that one really understands, or have an ear to listen of how this impact is really taking you down a path that you truly do not want to go down.
Well, with that all being said, last week, if for those who may not have been here on our podcast last week, you gave a good example in talking about relationship, and you gave an example about the grass, know, and how grass, you got to water it, you got to seed it, you got to do all these other things, and one other word you had used was cut, and then out of that example, I had said, but the only person who has the right to cut is the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Okay, it's like the grass, and we just had to cut grass we had so much rain for 3 weeks. This grass was as high as the tables that we had in the backyard, and so there was a certain way that we had to cut that grass.
Absolutely.
But the bottom line in relationships is that is that God has, when you coming out of that comfortable season with whatever type of relationship you have to uncomfortable because someone is doing a self-reflection, or someone is changing, the cutting is always coming from the Lord. It's never for each other to cut each other with words and so. And the reason why that happens is because with the person who is changing, the one who is not changing already got comfortable to a certain way, the way how the relationship was, how they did things, and so forth and whatever. So when the uncomfortability comes, you will find that the person who's not changing will begin to come out their mouth probably and say things that, it's just not nurturing, not growing that relationship. Because as we gave the example of the grass, that grass is constantly growing. And so if it's constantly being watered, if it's constantly being seeded like it was for the last 3 weeks, it's growing. But like I said, then what do you do in relationships when, and again, we're talking about all types of relationships here, okay? What do you do in the relationships when the grass is so high, and just it could be that it's growing, but also you can no longer see through. For instance, when I was cutting the grass, we couldn't see that there was a ball down low. So then I had actually cut that ball. So sometimes as relationships are growing, there's always a possibility that because you grow so much that there's something that's hidden that can't be seen.
Amen.
There's something that's hidden that can't be seen. And the only time that can be seen is when the cutting begins to start. And so when the Lord begins to deal with whomever it is in the relationship, again, it can be personal, it can be mother to child, it can be siblings to siblings, it can be employments. Whenever the cutting starts, it's because God is beginning to deal with somebody and they're starting to realize, you know what, I've got to do things differently because it's no more about everybody else. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so that grass situation was very was an impact last week. And I'm starting with that to say this because when there begins to be where God begins to deal with the individual about, okay, hey, you're no longer in that season of alien oil, blah, 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 okay? It becomes a bittersweet season. And I'm going to use Jesus as an example here. And I always call the cross a bittersweet season because at the time that he was doing something, he was nailing him. So he was actually committing suicide. So for those who say, well, where is suicide in the Bible? That's an example right there. We read our word, but we also have to look at the examples. Okay, that was suicide. So for those who say, oh, well, suicide is not covered by the blood of Jesus, I'm going to put it out there right now. That's a lie. I'm going to put it up because Jesus himself committed suicide. What do I mean by that? He knew what he was doing, that he was about to be killed. He could at any point had to said, you know what, I'm not, he could have any moment said, I'm not making this choice. Life is about choices, okay? So it was a bittersweet moment because he knew that he was committing this act for whom? For others. But the sweet part was that he knew what he was going to gain at the end for himself. So when you have bittersweet moments, bittersweet moments mean you are at the point in your life where you are no longer making the act to do for everybody else, but you in that act, you are at the same time helping others, but you're reaping the reward at the end. So that's a bittersweet. And sometimes that is one of the hardest seasons for anyone to be in. And the reason why I say that's the hardest one, because before that bittersweet moment, you have everybody around you, you're helping everybody. And just before you get to that bittersweet moment, it comes to where people are being cut off. You're starting to see who is who. You follow what I'm saying? He had all his disciples among him, but the moment that he decided to, okay, you know what? I have to now go to the next step. I have to do what I know that I was called to do. You follow what I'm saying? What God created me to do. Yes, I can get comfortable right here. With knowing that I'm being acknowledged. I'm being above all the Pharisees. The people are loving me. I'm creating miracles. I'm doing all of this stuff. Okay, so he could have sat here and stayed here and received all that glory. But the moment that he knew that he had to do what God had called him to do, not for anybody else. That's when you started to see that people were showing their true colors. Judas didn't, because he got, and I always say because he got angry, he turned over. Judas saw his human side. We have a right to be angry, but the word says sin not. But Jewish saw his human side of him being angry of how people was treating the temple and so forth, and he turned them. Now, this is someone who was in this inner circle for all those 3 years. So that's one person that showed his true side. And then when he when they came and got him, I mean, the only one that I can say was really fun was the one that cut the ear. You know what I'm saying? But then even Peter was strong and courageous right there when he cut the ear off of the soldier. But then when Jesus was going being whipped and blah blah blah, and they say, hey, wasn't you a part of so and so and so? He even left Christ. So in that bittersweet moment, there's those who are around you then begin to get pruned and cut off. Why? Because now it's where you're doing something that's going to benefit others. They may not like it, but the end reward is for you. So how do we deal with those bittersweet moments? And it's sad that the very people who endorse you or the very people who support you, when you now say, okay, I can't be this person anymore because I got to do this, those are the very same ones that begin to just act like they don't know you. And that's crushing. I know, and I'm going to keep using Jesus as an example because sometimes we ourselves, being the light and being Christ-like for others, when we come to the point of where we're saying, hey, I got to do this for me now. You want us, people saying, what's wrong with you? What's blah, blah, blah. But the very person that you knew that helped you to do all the whatever are the ones that's tearing you down. What's wrong with you? Who is you? And why do you think you so and so and so? And that's crushing. That's very crushing to the point to where Christ only had just his mama and the one that he loved at the cross. Amen. And so we when you said the word cross-bearing, I'm going to give it back to you. When you said the word cross-bearing, there are times when you will be able to lean on others or when others are going to lean on you. But there's always that moment when you have to stand for you. You really know who is standing with you. And at the very end, he had 12 disciples and everybody else. And only only two people was at that, and that's why they said, don't you ever do your mama wrong.
Amen.
Okay, because his mom was at the foot of the cross and only one person. And so when we find that one person, you can, people tell me, I got 5 friends, 10 friends. You know what? You really, really know when you're going through that bittersweet season, when you start to just, you just say, hey, it's time for me. I've got to, I have poured out, and my sister said something last night that was really, really crucial, or the night before last. When you find that you are going through that bittersweet season, and like I said, he only had 2 people, his mama and the one who was really his friend. The one who really cared for him. The one who really knew who he was. The one that he loved. Only 2 people. And you find that when that happens, and if and should it happens, the ones who are not there at that moment in the season is because those are the ones who were just fruit stealers. When my sister said that to me too, we was having a moment, and she said, I'm so tired of fruit stealers. They're always they're stealing. They feed off of all of what God gives you, all your skills, all your this, all your that. And it's not that, they're taking anything because you're freely given. But then when you at that moment where you have to do what you know that you're called to do, it's like, no more. I can't do this no more, because if I don't, I won't obtain what God has. You find out they're no longer around, or they cutting you, they cutting your throat, or they throwing you all types of names, they're deframing you and all that stuff. They are fruit stealers. Why? Because they take your fruit for their own motives, their own objectives, to get them where they want to get, but then they're not there when it's time for you to be able to excel. And it's when you're in that season, it's enough to throw you in depression. It's enough to it's enough for you to want to cut people's throats. It's enough you don't want to come out your face and tell people where to go. Go where the sun don't shine. Or it's enough you want to do all that because you're like, what is going on here? You're in the bittersweet season. You're in the bittersweet season. So we cannot be, and for this whole year, my mouth was closed because you're so angry. You're so angry, and then if it wasn't for a visit I just got at my job, I said something to a dear person that I love dearly. And when I said it, it snapped me. And that's when the Lord said, Robin, now you talk. Because as Christians, and I'm just keeping it real, we don't want, first of all, no matter what you're going through, no one has a right with what's coming on you to shut your mouth. That's the enemy. We know that. But I also know in the bittersweet moment, Jesus didn't talk so much. You find what I'm saying? Because he already acknowledged and realized that people just not understanding. So why even waste your... Because when he did, when you think about it, when he started going through that process of being whipped and all that, he said maybe 1 or 2 sentences. Why? Because he already understood. People didn't understand. They didn't want to accept him. You follow what I'm saying? So you close your... You say but so much. But then it's a point where you say, when God releases... You say it. You have to say it, because if you don't, then the enemy will shut your mouth for so long that you can't then come back and feed anybody else nor yourself. And so I remember when I said something this week on a Tuesday, I don't want to say the person's name, but they know I love her dearly, but that's when I heard the Lord say, we as Christians have to stop thinking that when we in the season, that we're not right with God, so we should not be speaking because we're so angry. When the word says, be angry, but sin not. But for me, when I'm in that season, I just don't feel right in my spirit. However, again, confirmation came out. I'm talking to my sister's going through. And the spirit, and as we talked about everything, and I said, okay, I said, you know what, sis, let me just go on this imminent prayer. And the spirit and anointing was there. So just because you're angry does not mean that the spirit is not with you. Does not mean that you still can't minister, because you hear that cliche, you're not supposed to minister in your spirit this season, because you don't want, the message to come across a certain way. And that's what's wrong. And that's what the Lord told me, because trust me, my season's not over. Every day that I walk into my work of employment, I'm in a fight. I got a devil and 3 demons I deal with every day. But I can no longer allow that to keep my mouth shut and feeding the people of God when I'm supposed to, because I just feel there's so much anger in how I'm being treated. You follow what I'm saying? God says no. The people of God ought to see their leaders just as they are, because that's what, as long as you're not sinning when you come in across with the word, as long as you're still feeding them, because we want to hide the human nature part. But it's the human nature part that's missing in the church, because people are not seeing that you're real. Amen. We want to be like I was, just sitting here looking like just so quiet. Look at who's the people the boxer and back in the day, and they had an interview, and he was just sitting there looking like he was just doped up. I'm Tyson and Robin. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. He was just sitting there like, and that's how I've been for the whole year, just sitting here, because I felt like in my season of being angry about stuff, I just couldn't say much. Afraid of what the church is going to say, because I'm talking I'm just speaking. I'm not sitting down. Am I not? I'm still very angry about how I'm being treated. But the bottom line is that we have got to stop this world and this Christian thing of making people feel condemned, because I've heard that. I've heard that all my Christian life. You don't preach and you don't pastor if you going, you know what I'm saying? When you going through certain things. That's what you hear as Christian. But God says, no, that's not so. I can use you any old type of way, as long as you sin not. As long as no foul words is coming out your mouth, as long as you're not so, you speak my word even in that season, so the people of God can see that you are real. That's what people are looking for in the church of God. Not someone who's sitting there acting like they hold this down. You got your mouth shut and you can't even speak a word because you've been condemned, or you've been criticized, or the church have got this thing saying you're not allowed to preach like that. The devil is a liar. My mouth is open, so whatever comes out now, you're going to get it. Because that's the season that I'm in. God is saying no.
Amen.
That's why there's so much, you know, the world says we not real, and what other words they say, what I'm trying to think of the other word the world say about church. You know, we faking, we phonies, that's the word. You know what I'm saying? So now when you get the real, you have to deal with it. You have to deal with it. And that's when you know when people are really for you and with you. Because God connects whoever he's going to connect to you and to your ministry.
That's right.
So I just thank God that, you know, I do what I know what I should do. But then when I know that God says, hey, it's time to let go, it's time to let go. And so it's no more for me, you know, holding back and thinking that I can't be real when I'm coming to the people of God.
Amen.
That condemnation is out.
Amen.
It's gone.
Amen.
Amen. So I thank God for that.
Amen.
Because, you know, I didn't want our people to think that, oh, it was something wrong with us. Yes, in this time of my season, we have had to have some serious talks and so and all that, but we still here. And we're still real. You follow what I'm saying?
Amen.
Yes, you know, there's been some serious things, like I said, with the grads, we have grown, but there was something that was deep down that was overlooked, and I had to bring those things to you, because I'm in that season where, you know what, everybody's getting theirs, time for mama to get hers, and sometimes we pour, and either the person feels bad about, you know, taking a stand for themselves, or the person who's watching you taking a stand, they begin to treat you differently. But you know what? I'm going to say this and pass this back to you. When you're in that season that you're doing a self-reflection, or that you know that you're in that bittersweet season, the bottom line is that you have come, and I'm going to say it this way, I'm going to just bring a very, very, very natural, very normal life application. When I looked at my life for the past 20-something years, I'm going to say even before 26, because we've been together 20-something years. All my life, when I look at when I made these decisions, every decision I have made was for someone else. Every decision, I may not say every, I'm going to probably say 90%. Because when I wanted to go back to school, I went back to school. But the reality was 90% of decisions that I made in my life was to better and to aid somebody else. Crucial people. And rightfully so. When you become a parent, you got to do for kids. When you become a wife, you got to make the right decisions and make the whole, you understand, the whole thing function. So when you find yourself realizing that it's time for self-reflection. When you find yourself slipping into a depression, it's time for reflection. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's when, you know, ever since I've taken a stand, I've been feeling my joy, a little bit of my joy coming back. I mean, I've even, as my Facebook followers, I don't cut no grass. I don't get no backyard. But I've got the energy to do, you the metabolism, because while you no longer walk around with a lack of joy, a lack of love, because you're starting to do for you. You know, this Friday went by, you know, I had things to do that involved everybody. And when I saw, immediately my mind was ready to do, you know, something that was benefiting to everybody else. I said, me first. Me first. You know what I'm saying? And I said, me first. Simple things. Me first. And then I go and I put the other things on the burner. And it makes you come back to, you know, but what I've been realizing and witnessing and acknowledging is there's two things the word said. And I was sharing this with my dad the other day, this one day this week too. I said, Dad, you know what? I said, when the word says in the last day, first of all, in the last, he said people's going to become selfish. There's nothing wrong with doing for you first, and then you still doing for others. But I've been seeing a lot of selfishness that's been cutting and diving into my spirit. Selfish, he was so true when he said that people's going to be very selfish. And he also was very right when the word said the root of all evil is money. Okay, because people will cut you up. When they see you doing you, but yet you get ready to tap into something that they used to, okay? And that's selfish. That's why those two go together. You follow what I'm saying? And so I just have to say, Father Jesus, I'm going to give it to you, but my mouth is not going to be shut no more. Because being shut, you will become what everyone still wants you to be, so that that comfortableness is there for everybody else, but you yourself is no longer comfortable. you yourself can't even find you. You yourself is not happy. You can't make it's hard. So I wanted to share that this morning. That's why we was bouncing back and forth who was going to give the message today, because I knew God had said, Robert, you have to release. You have to open your mouth this Sunday. But at the same time, I'm like, God, this is real talk. This is not me preparing a sermon here. I'm going to throw some scripture, but this is not me preparing, something such. So I was leery, but, we're doing it. Amen. Amen. So I'm going to pass it back to you.
I think the road you went down is a very realistic road, not individually, but together, that all relationships face. But you just mentioned something that's very crucial, I believe, in healthy partnership and relationship. You mentioned finding you. Finding you. That is huge, because everyone has to find themselves for them to do a couple of things. You have to find you to sacrifice for somebody. You have to find you to be crushed for somebody. You have to find you to be pruned for somebody. You got to find you to know how you have grown and matured for somebody. Finding you is huge, because what you've done, you've taken an analogy of yourself and you've moved.
That's the word.
You've taken an analogy of yourself and you have moved.
That's the word.
You have personally taken action towards something. Finding you. And I thought when you said that was huge, simply because as we promote and we graduate and we mature, that is what we're manifesting. So let's just rewind some of the things that you've said. During this season, all of what you endured forced you to find you. Forced you to find you. The unwillingness to support, the rejection, the ill feelings, things of that nature that was trying to subtract as you were trying to promote. It's huge that we get to this point in all of our relationships, but that's real. That's real, because finding you is so crucial. Is so crucial to our development of who we are to become. Think of it this way: when God speaks to us, He doesn't speak to us as we are right now. He speaks to the finished product. He speaks to the finished product, the person to whom you are to become. It's our job to find ourselves, find that journey, embrace that journey, and to become that person that God is speaking to. So finding you is huge. And what we're faced with after we've embraced who we are, here's the struggle. Now you have to fight off people that don't want you to maintain who you are.
Exactly.
You have to then fight off those that want to restrict your growth, your maturity, of sustaining who you are. That comes full force when you recognize what God has poured into you. And as you said, as the Lord said, it's time for you to stand and open your mouth. A lot of the times we're put in positions to where people don't like to hear truth, or the aggressive truth that Christ teaches. We all read the word about Christ, but you have to really get into the word to understand a lot of what he said was very aggressive. It wasn't high, it wasn't low, it was to the point. That's why God used stories to paint the picture of what you're not missing, of what you're missing, and what you weren't getting. He aggressively told stories to put into place the reality of what he was speaking. So what do we have to do when we are faced in this manner? Not tell stories, but we have to identify who we are. We have to be willing to come full circle on who we are and what God has poured in us, and take a stand for those things and what we are becoming. The maturity level, the growth, the development, the whole 9 yards. And I think you know as well as I do, people are threatened when you take a stand for who you are. All people do that fight against truth, that fight against honesty, that fight against commitment, that fight against the willingness to come together. There's always a root cause. And when an individual defines themselves of who they are, those that are resistant to allowing them to be who they are, there's always a root cause. There's always a root cause. Nothing manifests itself like that or in any other circumstance or situation without a root cause.
Well, you know, I think every human being has a right to stand for what they believe. Okay? But the thing is, sometimes when everyone is, and I'm going to try to say this a certain way, when everyone is trying to find themselves, I think the problem, what happens, because everyone, you know, you can have 5 people in the room, okay, where 5 people in the room where everyone is standing for what they believe. But there's always a center, a point that everybody should have a common ground.
Amen.
If you really listen,
Amen.
And that's a key thing.
Amen.
You have 5 individual people, but if they're not all listening to the common thing that you can then work from that and then work outward, meaning then everyone would get whatever they're trying to work towards. It's impossible if the key thing is they're not willing to listen.
I agree with
And
that.
one of the reasons why people are not willing to find the common thing and not willing to listen is because they have their own motives, they have their belief, we have it right, but they also have their own emergencies. And everybody always feel that their emergency or their needs and their wants is greater than somebody else's. And I think that's the key right there. People have a tendency of feeling that their need is greater than everybody else. But when you put something greater than everybody else's and you in leadership, or you the husband, or you the parent, because parents are over children, you know, as the words say, men held their head to the wives. You know, when you at a place of employment, your boss is over you. But if you put your needs greater than everybody else's, it's going to be a hostile environment eventually.
I agree.
Because you're not coming to the common, you're not finding the common need of everybody. So that everybody, you know, it's a better way of saying this. You know, Bill's why they say share the wealth. You follow what I'm saying? And church is another thing, mission, vision, whatever it may be. But you know, it's where people are not willing to just be willing to listen. Well, what is she really asking for to make her better herself, to help her with whatever task has been assigned to her, to help her or him?
I like the term CC, communicate and compromise, but go right ahead.
You elaborate on that. Go ahead.
Communicate and compromise, because that's where you find out how effective you are with listening.
Say that CC again.
Communicate and compromise.
Is that what CC stands for when you do CC in the okay?
So in that form,
I like that.
What that form is that, first of all, you have to have an ear to listen. If you have an ear to listen, then you communicate effectively. And when you have those bridges that have to be crossed, then you compromise it. You can't be selfish with your own agenda. That doesn't equal compromise. A compromise means that this side gives up something, this side gives up something for both to come together and complete an objective, whatever that objective may be. Without communication and compromise, it's an uphill battle.
And do you notice that the first thing that people cut out of the relationship when they're on their own agendas is communication?
Absolutely.
And that's why I said their own. Let me hold your thought for a minute. Hold
Sure, go ahead.
You need to write down
No,
okay.
I got it.
They cut the communication out because, number one, I'm going to just be honest. They're so stuck on who they are that they think they're here and that their stuff is more important than the person that they choose not to communicate with. And then what you find what they would do is they get that person out the way if they're in leadership or authority figure. You follow what I'm saying? And so people sometimes feel that they're a good leader by sabotaging others because they choose not to communicate. Because when you communicate, there is no sabotaging.
Mm-hmm.
You follow what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
When you communicate, you're really trying to get to the root so that everyone can do what needs to be done and that everyone can grow. Mm-hmm. But when you have people who believe that their belief and their needs and their wants is here and yours is here, they're cut. The first thing is communication, and then sabotage come afterwards. They just get you out the way. Mm-hmm. But that's not good leadership. No. That's not a good relationship. Mm-hmm. And that's why in relationship, now and then place employment is sabotage and we just get them out the way because you choose not to be a good leader and communicate. Mm-hmm. Find out, get to the root. In relationships, what happens that yes, the communication is cut, and what happens, how they get the person out their life, the divorce. Mm-hmm. So we have to come to the point of realizing that no matter where you at, and older folks always, we hear that as a cliche, but communication is very important. If you would just, not just communicate to hear somebody, but are you really listening? Because I can hear, we always hearing things, mm-hmm. but are you really listening? Mm-hmm. Some people don't have the time to want to listen, again, mm-hmm. because they feel that their thoughts, their ways, their needs, their wants is higher than the one that they asking to do something for them. Mm-hmm. You need that person, but yeah, you got your everything above, but you can't do what you need to get done unless you listen to that person. Mm-hmm. So you want to take fruit stealers, mm-hmm. you want to take from them, but you don't want to listen and communicate.
One of the reasons I believe that people eliminate, they take, or they try to subtract the communication part when it comes to that because they can't improve their argument. So if they can't improve their argument, if they can't sustain what they're talking about, they eliminate communication. For you to be effective, and if you want to challenge communication with compromise, you have to know how to improve your argument. And when people don't have a means to improving their argument, they eliminate the communication phase. They don't want to do no talking. The only thing they want to do is tell you what needs to happen. Where's the communication in that? Where's the compromise in that? If you can't improve what you're trying to deliver, you're going to have problems. And if we bring this, if we bring this same mold, if we bring this same methodology into relationship, that relationship will not grow. That relationship will not mature. That's real, whether it's in-house or out-house. But that's what I truly believe. When people try to remove the communication aspect out because they can't improve their argument to why you can't improve yourself or why you can't manifest a way of improving yourself to sustain a certain level. They can't justify the subtraction when you're trying to produce more in your life.
You know what? And you said they can't improve their argument, but that's the problem right there because it shouldn't be an argument.
Their argument is because they don't want you to improve ourselves.
Okay, but let me just stay on the point that I'm saying. First of all, it should never be where anyone should have to improve their argument. Okay, and I hear why you said that, and it makes sense. And the only reason why a person is trying to improve their argument is because they only see it one way.
Exactly.
And that's theirs.
Exactly.
And that's why I said it shouldn't be an argument.
Exactly.
And that's why you have arguments. Mm-hmm. Let's just be real about argument. And that's why I said, that's one right there. You have arguments because someone is trying to get you to see their way.
Only.
Exactly. And so when it's about arguments, there will be no improving yourself or improving the company or improving the relationship because they only seeing one way.
That's right.
Theirs.
That's right. That's right.
And that's not what relationships is all about. So we as human beings have got to stop and take a check. And you know what's so interesting is because I learned that the very thing sometimes that people are doing to you, they can't take it when it's being done to them. And so that's why when it comes to companies, they sabotage and they get you out. Or when it comes to relationships, they get divorced. They don't like when they themselves when the other person is taking a stand, it's like they take a stand and they can't deal with it.
You know, we talk about a lot that the strength that's needed to be a part of a healthy and growing marriage and relationship. When it comes down to the flip on that side, you truly find out what a lot of people are made of when they can't make that stand. When they truly do not understand the strength that's needed to compromise, the strength that's needed to endure patiently, the strength that needed to know that there will be sacrifices and a lot of hard work that lies ahead. Those people that feel that they don't want to promote that step away from that. They step away from that because that's not part of their agenda. Their agenda is directing for you or directing for others to meet what their goals are. That goes back to the selfishness that you spoke of earlier.
Well, you know what? I'm going to end with it because I know we can wrap up in about another 10 to 15 minutes. You know, I think, and I'm going to first start with relationships, person to person, and then when it comes to organizations. Because I think a lot of people who listen, their goal is also to run a company or to, you know what I'm saying? And I think one of the mistakes that happens in a relationship, I'm going to start the relationship first, is that no one person should ever feel that that's all their way. Okay? Because if you could have done it all by yourself, then you should have never said I do to the other individual. No one comes into a relationship to be a maid or to be we know the word submissive there, but we also know the word is love when it comes from man to woman is love and vice versa. So whenever in the relationship one person think that their way is the best way and the other person have to subject or the other person has to submit all the time or whatever, that's going down here. And you are just pushing that person away because you may be comfortable for a while, but rest assured, if that person loves themselves and, as you said, finds themselves, or or miracle hat, whatever it may be, that person eventually is not gonna be there because that just doesn't work. No one wants to live their whole entire life being subjected to another individual and their goals or their the things that God has called them to do. It's not coming to pass. Okay? So that's relationship wise. And then when it comes to companies, yes, we know that companies and organizations have the right to, to set things into motion, blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is when you have your workers, you're not listening to your workers and you think, your leaders have all the answer. Eventually what happens? I mean, as being one person who's involved with the union, you have the I am situation where the company wasn't listening to their workers. The workers are telling them, hey, this is a priority. This is a priority. It took for people to die for them to realize that you better listen to your workers. They're the one doing the job. You need to listen to your workers. If they need A, B, C, D, at some point, you have to make that priority and that sacrifice to make sure that each department and each, is functioning and being effective and proficient in what you want them to do to make your company grow. And so sometimes even in that aspect, people don't want to listen to the normal folks because they all up here, but the normal folks down here is doing everything. You know what I'm saying? And so you get all this this nonsense, and there's a term that's quid pro. It comes where if you do for me, I do for you. So if you stop doing for me, I won't do for you. That's crazy, and that falls in all types of relationships. And so for me, in closing, I just feel that people ought to come to a point of being willing to listen. You got to listen for anything to grow. I don't care where you at. You have to listen and not just be so stuck on your way, my way, or the highway.
I'll say this and then Lady P will close. There is a connection between a partnership, a marriage, and a workplace. There are certain peculiar things that each one of these need for the partnership, the relationship to grow. when you hear places that say, oh, this is one of the best places to work, it's the best place to work because it has a lot of values that relationships have. For you to work in a place that's considered the best, one of the best places to work, there's faithfulness to their employees.
Exactly.
When you work for a place that's labeled the best places to work, there is commitment to your employees. But more importantly, when you work for a place that's considered to be one of the best places, they have gratitude toward their employees. Everything I just said is also based off a relationship. That's what distinguishes workplace employment, healthy relationships, and marriages together. They take the same values of commitment and they apply them into a manner and an environment that make their workers successful, but more importantly, want to be there. And those are the things that we continue to strive for.
And even relationship, all those things you just said, the same thing. You said that again because those are things also with a relationship, gratitude and commitment, one with another. Exactly. You have to have those things in order for your relationship and your work of employment to continue to be successful. When companies aren't successful, I am willing on betting. I don't have the statistics, but I can get them. I am willing to bet you, like a pyramid, one of those three are gone. And like oxygen putting out a fire, if you take out any of the elements, the fire goes away. So if you don't have faithfulness, if you don't have commitment, and you don't have gratitude, if you don't have those three within an organization, your organization starts to suffer. Because leadership.
Yeah, exactly. Because what flows from the top affects at the lower levels. Then you compare that within relationship, you need all of those. That you can't have any subtraction from none of those. Because that's how your relationship maintains, sustains itself, and grows.